So today is another day of my spring break, and it's an overcast day, but I'm very happy to go out again for another sketching adventure. So spring is slowly arriving in Vancouver. We're getting a lot of rainy days in March this year. So we're getting off at Main Street SkyTrain station, taking bus number 3 to the Mount Pleasant area again. There are lots of nice cafes there. So here we are, somewhere close to Kingsway and Main Street. We're approaching this cafe and it looks very decent from the outside. There's some heritage buildings around. I love these tables and chairs. Let's go in. Yeah, there are a lot of customers at this hour around noon. And I see different types of scones, biscuits, croissants. And on the other side, I think they have some specialty cakes. And today, since I already had something to eat at home, I'm gonna just try a cake, a specialty chocolate cake. And also I got a cup of London Fog latte. So the shape of the chocolate cake is very clear and straightforward. It's a cylinder. So the top is an ellipse. The two sides and the base. There's a raspberry there on top as a little ornament. And using much more gentle lines to suggest the surface curve of the cylinder. And also the texture of how they spread the cream on the outside of the cake. The fork on the side, and drawing the contour outline of the plate. The plate, I actually shrinked the size a little bit because it's too big, and I don't want the plate to take over too much space on my sketchbook page spread. Okay, so now I'm ready to sketch my cup of London Fog latte, starting with the ellipse shape of the opening. This is a very common kind of mug. And then the little bit of yarn holding the tea bag, the brim, and the saucer. Yet gently suggesting the thickness of the saucer plate. And the liquid line of the latte is very foamy. The logo of the cafe, and the little spoon to stir the latte, suggesting a bit of shine and accentuation. Well, the London Fog latte is actually pretty easy to paint. So just wetting it and putting a very diluted yellow ochre. Same for the spoon, it's a more concentrated yellow ochre. And for the first layer of the chocolate cake, I'm using pretty diluted red-brown to start with. Clean my brush and mixing yellow ochre with burnt sienna to paint the darkest area on the London Fog latte. Now, second layer, wet into moist. I'm using red-brown mixed with burnt sienna to add some gradation or tonal transition for the chocolate cake. So the top side of the cake, the ellipse, is getting a lot of daylight. So it's the brightest side, not too dark. It's just the left side of the body of the cylinder is shaded more heavily. The little shadows of the two ornaments. So for the blackberry, I'm using permanent violet. And this thing is just a paper label. Yeah. Now, using the mix of cobalt blue and permanent violet to shade these metallic and white ceramic surfaces, and just dipping into the shading pretty gently using a very diluted version of blue violet for all of these white surfaces. Everything that's white in the world is always shaded with at least a little bit of gray. Metallic stuff could look heavier. Painting the shadow for the cake, shadow for the fork, and the mug shadow. And shading the mug's left side a little bit heavier, as I see it's more shaded. Final bit of a little bit of gray. Here and there, the shadow for the saucer. And the big plate holding the cake. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, with some final bit of renderings on the cake. So last week I was here and the flowers were still buds in these vases. And today, now I'm here, they're all blooming beautifully. And now I can see they are little lilies. So these are my recent sketchbook pages capturing some early spring vibes around Vancouver. Moving on, I'm ready to sketch this vase of fresh flowers, starting with the neck and then the body of the vase, the base. So I'm not finishing drawing the vase because there are some leaves in the way. So for example, this one dangling and another one. All of these leaves, they are in slight different sizes and shapes because they're laying in different positions. And just drawing the petals of the first lily that I see in the front, and then drawing the little tubes of stamen in the middle, and then adding these stamps and hidden parts of leaves behind the flower. And there's one more petal. I think a lily flower has 6 petals on each flower, and then adding another flower laying sideways. And then keep tracing out more flower petals and tips of leaves. And then moving on to the right side of the little bouquet. Some more flower petals laying sideways, not facing me. Some wavy leaves. And I just love the gestures of these flowers and leaves. All of these round shapes and wavy lines, they're showing a sense of happiness and energy of spring. Yeah, so by sketching this vase of flowers, I'm sharing the ambience of spring with you all, and adding these ridges on the outside of the vase. It's transparent, so we can see the stamps through the water. And now it's time to paint watercolors. So just wetting these flowers and leaves with a little bit clear water, starting with the yellows first. So there's like a yellow undertone for these orange colored lilies. And then comes the orange, wet into wet with the yellow. And it's very satisfying to see the yellow blending with the orange, kind of like sunrise or sunset color scheme. Now I'm punching on some diluted permanent red for these pinky lilies. Yeah, and then mixing less water into the permanent red to paint the next layer for these pink lilies. And again, the technique I'm using is wet into wet for a soft gradation. So after the flowers, I'm painting the first layer for these leaves, starting with yellow-green. So mixing lemon yellow into yellow-green. Same for the stem in the water. Second layer, pretty much just pure yellow-green. And then a quick third layer, Viridian green. Yeah, and carefully skipping around these little stripes of darker green without covering the bright yellow-green completely. So these leaves are glowing. So green is a really healthy color for our eyes and soul. And the glass vase has a very gentle tint of pink. So I'm using very diluted permanent red, leaving some little streaks paper white for the shine of glass. And then using blue violet to shade the vase, especially the base area. And using very thin brush marks to add on the shade. Yeah, I'm just keeping the shading gray very mild. So if you use very heavy shade for glass, it may not look that transparent anymore. There could be some areas of heavy shade on glass vessels, but from my experience, it should be about only like 20%, not more. And adding some bit of small renderings on these little lily flowers, bit more strengthened shade on the leaves, using the shade of green by mixing burnt sienna into Viridian. Because there's several cars parked right outside the window, and putting these food and drink and a vase in the front, taking over the space of the cars. Okay, so that's the view in front of me that I'm about to sketch. So I spent about 5 minutes doing a very quick and light pencil draft, because a lot of professional designers and artists, they do have a pencil draft before inking. And yes, I want to be more professional and I used to do urban sceneries directly with a pen, and sometimes I just run out of space of something that's really nice that I really want to include. So doing a pencil draft ensures that I include everything I want to include. And starting to draw the major parts of the house, the large roof and the smaller roof. And that's probably the porch area with a nice staircase and the car parked in front of the heritage house. Okay, so now I want to move on to adding more medium shapes before the smaller details. Another section of the roof and a lovely lace attached to the eave of the roof and the attic windows and another small roof. This is probably the bay windows of the living room. Now adding the shingle details and the bay window of the living room and another little roof dividing the two floors. Some floating structures. So as you can see, I'm getting these major sections of the house in, and then moving on to the smaller details, like the windows inside each section, railings of the porch, and smaller shapes like window panels, and just focusing on one section of the house at a time. Okay, and moving on to the bay windows area. Behind these windows is probably the living room. And drawing the curtains, very old-fashioned curtains, and the space behind, showing the depths of the interior space. More curtains on the lower floor. This is probably another sitting room on the second level. And now I'm starting to add these large frames on the exterior of the house. And this is probably a balcony. Below the balcony is actually a barber shop. This is the canopy of the balcony area. And the right side of the house is very foreshortened, including these windows, visually very squished. And then adding these loose, gentle, horizontal lines to suggest the shingles on the exterior of the house and for the roof as well. And I'm very curious about what kind of family is living in that heritage house. Now, moving on to these middle brick buildings and this larger heritage building. Yeah, just adding the rooftop structures for this large heritage building, which is now a dance school teaching ballet dance. Okay, and yeah, just adding some more details for these terracotta brick buildings. Because these buildings are more far away, I'm actually simplifying the inner details more. So they're not coming way too forward and compete with the heritage house. smaller windows, and yeah, less details. But I want to show the brick texture. And these buildings, they are now somewhat similar to Diagon Alley of Harry Potter World, where you can buy magic supplies, right? So I've been to Harry Potter World in Florida, part of Disney World, I think. Yeah, about 7 years ago. Now, adding these windows of the larger heritage building, now a dance school, yeah. And this dance school called Go Ballet is actually a very well-known dance school here in Vancouver, and they're performing a lot at famous theaters here in Vancouver, like the Nutcrackers. And yeah, it's fun to draw behind the flowers. And since I already drew that electricity post, I'm not really afraid to drawing these electricity wires. They're part of the urban landscape. Yeah, so adding a sense of connection and also front and back relationship. So here's the look of my finished drawing of the urban view outside the cafe window. Okay, so now it's time to bring this view to life using watercolors. So most of the things outside, they are gray, including the sky. But I'm staining the sky with very diluted yellow ochre to show the sunshine pushing through the thick clouds. Same for these white and gray buildings. I just want to give them a sense of inviting atmosphere, yeah, by doing this underpainting of very diluted yellow ochre, and also adding a sense of nostalgia. Now, bravely painting the overcast sky using the mix of cobalt blue and permanent violet. And just dropping a bit more violet, partially on the cloud, just to have more expression. And painting sky is always fun for me because I can express myself very spontaneously. I like to paint my sky and get it done really quickly without fumbling with it too much. Now, painting some warm tones for the brick buildings in between, using orange mixed with burnt sienna, and using pure burnt sienna and looser dotting brushstrokes to suggest the brick texture. And mixing permanent violet into burnt sienna to get a darker and colder brown for the next layer of brick texture, brush marks. So this building is white, but since it's heritage, I just added some very diluted brown on the side. And the staircase for the heritage house is wooden, so just using leftover yellow brown. The roof is, for black roofs, it could be like a dark indigo or dark purple kind of color. And same for black buildings. You don't have to use the pure black in your palette. For me, I pretty much never use black, especially for painting like outdoor stuff. Adding some warm tones of yellow for the railings and some colder grays for the roofs. It's nice to have some vibrant green for these window frames. And I think this green or turquoise blue, turquoise green, they are pretty common colors on heritage houses. And I remember my grandma's kitchen wall was painted in this color. Yeah, and then painting the awning of the barber shop. Okay, and painting the walkway, the sidewalk. I'm very glad that I decided to paint the little flower bouquet because it's just mostly muted colors in the background. And shading these little squares of glass window panels with leftover bluish gray. Another layer for these roof shingles, just to add a sense of depth, that there are layers of shingles. Adding shadows for the eave, and the right side of the house is shaded. The front is getting more sunlight. So when you're painting a house that you can see 2 or more sides, make sure you shade at least one side so it looks more 3D. There are also shadows from these bulging structures on the house. The bay window, yeah, the very right side is shaded. And on the brick building, that bulging structure is also casting a shadow on the right. And shading the dance school building a little bit more. Adding a shadow for the curb landing on the street. And adding some final polish for the right side of the dance school building. Again, the left side I think is brighter. The sun is, I think, more on the left side of the sky, making the yellows a little bit warmer because there are a lot of cold colors. I really want my warm colors to stand out. Yeah, so here's the look of my finished sketchbook page spread. And it's easier to paint when the sun is shining with higher contrast of light and shade. Now it's time to go home. I think I'm going to sketch this heritage clock of Mount Pleasant, iconic landmark, very soon. So thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. A rainstorm is on the way. It's my spring break, so I have more time to film and edit videos. I'll see you around in the next few days. Take care and bye.